Beam is a name that has defined bourbon for over 225 years. From humble beginnings to worldwide recognition, their story is the story of bourbon itself. Welcome to this episode of Wistery, where I explore the rich and colorful heritage of your favorite beverage. I'm your Professor Bourbon Barry, and do I have a story for you. In 1740, the Beam family came to the 13 colonies, determined to live the colonial dream. 48 years later, they moved where Kentucky is now and changed their name to Beam. By the late 1700s, German, Scottish, and Irish settlers were making rye whiskey in western Pennsylvania. With government incentives to move west and grow corn, many moved to the Kentucky region. Among them was Jacob Beam, who used his father's whiskey recipe to distill corn into a new, sweeter kind of whiskey. In 1795, Jacob Beam sold his first barrel of whiskey called Old Jake Beam Sour Mash, made using a mash bill that would go on to set the standard for what we now call bourbon. Distilled on his Kentucky farm, Jacob's whiskey was sought after for its smooth, consistent flavor. In 1820, Jacob Beam handed the distillery over to his son David Beam. Back then, people simply brought their jugs to fill straight from the barrel. But seeing change on the horizon, David enlarged the distillery and changed to column stills for continuous operation. He also renamed the bourbon Old Tub. In 1854, David M. Beam, the third generation of the Beam family, recognized the importance of modernization. He relocated the distillery to Nelson County, Kentucky, strategically placing it near railroads and riverways. This move ensured the efficient transportation of bourbon and allowed the brand to reach a national audience. Even during the Civil War, bourbon remained a staple in American culture, and the Beam family continued to produce whiskey, cementing their role in the industry. By 1894, James Beauregard Beam, known as Jim Beam, took over the family business. His name would become synonymous with the brand and with the bourbon itself. Prohibition in 1920 forced the Beam family to halt production, but this wasn't the end of their story. Jim Beam never gave up on his family's legacy. After Prohibition ended in 1933, Jim Beam rebuilt the distillery from the ground up in just 120 days. This resilience marked the rebirth of bourbon and the creation of the Jim Beam brand that we know today. Celebrating all that his father accomplished, Beam's son, T. Jeremiah Beam, refounded the distillery in 1935 as the Jim Beam Distilling Company and dubbed the bourbon Jim Beam. After opening the new distillery, T. Jeremiah, Jerra Beam, helped his father run the family business until he officially took the reins in 1946. Soon after, he began shipping cases of Jim Beam to American servicemen stationed overseas. By the 1950s, Booker No, Jim Beam's grandson, joined the family business. Known for his deep knowledge and passion for bourbon, Booker played a pivotal role in the continuing of the family's legacy. In 1987, Booker No revolutionized the bourbon industry by introducing the small batch bourbon collection. Brands like Booker's, Knob Creek, Basil Hayden's, and Baker's elevated bourbon to a premium product, inspiring the modern craft whiskey movement. By the early 2000s, Jim Beam had become a household name and the #1 selling bourbon in the world. The Beam family continued to innovate, honoring their heritage while meeting the demands of a growing global market. In 2007, Fred No, Booker's son and a 7th-generation Beam distiller, became master distiller. Fred brought his own unique vision to the family legacy, balancing tradition with the future of bourbon. In 2014, the Beam family's journey took another major turn. The Japanese spirits company Suntory, known for their expertise in whiskey, purchased Beam Incorporated for $16 billion, forming a powerhouse in the global spirits industry. This strategic acquisition brought together two storied whiskey traditions, American bourbon and Japanese whiskey, creating a new era for the Beam family legacy. Under Suntory's ownership, the Beam family's brands reached new global heights. While the Beam family continued to maintain their role in the business, Suntory's innovation and international reach opened new doors for bourbon, bringing it to new markets and fans across the globe. In 2021, the Beam Distillery underwent a massive transformation, and the distillery was rebranded as the James B. Beam Distilling Company, honoring the man who rebuilt the distillery after Prohibition. The new facility blends the family's rich heritage with latest technology, offering a modern bourbon experience that keeps Beam's legacy alive and well. And today, the tradition continues with Fred No's son, Freddie, the 8th generation master distiller. And in case you didn't know, Freddie's nickname is Little Book, which is the name of Freddie's first product. From Jacob Beam's first barrel in 1795 to Freddie No's leadership today, the Beam family has shaped the bourbon industry for over 225 years. Their legacy isn't just about making whiskey, it's about creating an enduring tradition that's enjoyed by millions around the world. So here's to the Beam family, a name that defines bourbon and a legacy that continues to inspire. Raise a glass to history, innovation, and tradition. I'm your Professor Bourbon Barry. Cheers.